digital marketing. So far, you have already been exposed to the various fundamentals from traditional marketing perspective. You've seen what the 4 Ps are. You know to a fair bit what segmentation and targeting is. But at this point, you're going to start on a long journey into understanding and applying digital marketing to whatever you plan to do. An important part of this journey is to understand where we are and to look ahead into the future as you build on more and more tools in this course. An important component of this, like I said, is to put all of these various tools you will pick up together at one point. And it is this session which is going to help us to sort of give you a view into the future, tell you a few exciting things that you will pick up, and also to give you this big picture view, because the only other point where you will probably pause and put all of these together is at the very end when you have picked up all the individual components. So with that in mind, this is what we have in this short session. By the end of this session, firstly, there are two objectives. The first objective is to understand this critical role played by both the primary digital property and the secondary digital property. At this point, usually from our experience with several learners over a period of time, the primary digital properties broadly have two objectives. There are people who wish to make commerce out of their digital property, that is, they have a product or service, either online or offline, and they wish to use a single point on the internet, usually a full-fledged website, to sell or to conduct commerce. A second group, the creative among us, want to use these singular property on the internet as their reflection of what they are, their creative capabilities, and in fact just to put out what they feel about things that are important to them. So there are these two different flavors, and both of them are valuable in terms of objectives that one should have. And we will try to understand what role does primary digital property play, what role does secondary digital property play, how are they different, and how do they sort of link to each other to help us achieve the overall objectives. The second objective of this session is, of course, to identify the different kinds of digital marketing efforts that you will see as you go along this course. Thankfully, there are only 3 such types, and I'll take 3 examples to indicate or highlight how these 3 campaign objectives can be met to a well-coordinated digital marketing plan. So with this in view, let me move on and quickly take you through a few examples of primary and secondary digital properties. As I take you through each of these 4 brands and take you to their primary digital property to begin with, pay very close attention to the flavor of the digital property. What is being highlighted? What do you think is the objective of each of these digital properties? So let's go through these digital properties for each of these 4 brands one by one. The first digital property we are going to look at is this very local brand called Samosa Singh. It's there only in a few cities. It's not a very popular brand. In fact, it is very localized. I'm sure many of you would not have probably heard of this brand unless you've been their customer. And this is their main website, or what we will henceforth refer to as their primary digital property. This is the singular place of their own on the internet where they showcase their products. They tell the world what they mean or what they stand for as a brand, and give also opportunity for customers to order. In fact, if you see in the first view, as you see here, is a very dominant focus on online ordering. This is a new brand. It's trying to build customers, and in the very first frame, there are already 2 calls to action, and both of them inviting or enticing you through gorgeous imagery of food to place orders. As you scroll down, we see that the narrative shifts a little bit into more about what they stand for as a brand, why they started this brand probably, their menu, and goes on to give you more opportunities to order along with customer testimonials. As we can see, this property center and focus of this whole experience that we just saw is on ordering, is to give you that, to convince you that this product is really yummy, and then there are multiple ways in which you could place an order, either directly or through delivery partners. If you notice, what is really missing or what is not very apparent is their social media pages, like this brand's page on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. In fact, they are there tucked away right at this bottom, very easy to miss. So this is very curious, right? So what you probably already know is that each of these pages, which are there on usually on social media platforms, say the Facebook page, the Instagram page, and the Twitter page, these are what we refer to as secondary digital properties, or SDPs. So this whole website, which is owned by samosasing.com, is their primary digital property. It is a singular place on the internet where customers or people who possibly don't know who they are can come, discover the brand, place orders, and really also, if required, go forth to their community pages on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, wherever they might be, and try to discover what they have to offer. Now let's try visiting one of these pages. Let's try to visit their Instagram page to see how that page is laid out. So this is the Instagram page of the same brand, Samosa Singh, and as you can see, there is quite a bit of following. They've done about 450 odd posts. Now let me scroll through the same feed, through the feed of the same brand, and closely observe the kind of posts that they have made. As you can see, much of what they are saying is actually very little focused on ordering now. There is a lot of focus on capturing of events, associating themselves with what is buzzing right now, possibly in the world. There is Eid, there is Earth Day, there is a lot of things that are here which are capturing the spirit of the community. What is missing and what is the difference of what you see here and what is possibly there on their main website is a lack of strict call to action. In fact, the only way you could place orders is actually when you click the web link on their page, which will again take you back to their main page, and that's where you can possibly place the order. So while we move on to the next primary and secondary digital properties, keep this distinction in mind, and as we go along through the 4 brands, I hope this distinction will become crisper and more clearer. For now, what we have just seen is that this brand, a new brand, local brand, very small, has a primary digital property, which is its main website, as the one place where people can discover them, place orders, and if really required, go to the secondary digital property, which is a page on popular social media platforms. What is very interesting is that while the call to action or the link from the secondary digital property back to the primary digital property is very prominent and appears right in front on the description, it is not so apparent as you scroll through the page, and we saw that the secondary digital properties for this brand are in fact tucked away right at the bottom and are very easy to miss. So that's about that small brand. Now think of on the other side about a huge brand like, say, Amazon, and this is no surprises here that this is their primary digital property. This is the one place where customers of Amazon or new customers of Amazon come to discover what they have to offer, and boy, do they offer a lot, right? They sell literally everything. And let's scroll down through this very different primary digital property for Amazon. In fact, as you scroll down, you will see a barrage of products. In fact, I have not logged in here, but if I had signed in, the very first splash screen would possibly show me what my current orders are, and if there is something on the way for me, it will summarize my orders. Now, as I scroll along, try to spot the secondary digital properties of Amazon. Amazon is a huge brand, makes a lot of investments on building community on social media platforms, and this is their primary digital property. This is the site where their sales happen. And the links to the secondary digital properties, which is essentially their pages on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram are once again tucked away right at the bottom, where there is an opportunity to connect with them. If, for example, if to give you a different flavor of the Twitter page of Amazon India, you can see that they do make, once again, the flavor of this is all around sales and what is buzzing, possibly aligning themselves to certain specific events that might be happening. And this is a very, very different flavor of the social brand page. Very different from what we've seen Samsung Samosa Singh doing. A lot of pointers back to Amazon in. There is a lot of links to the main page, and once again, the direction from the primary digital property, which is Amazon.in, to a secondary digital property is not so prominent, but from the primary digital property back is right, very, very prominent, right in front, and very hard to miss. So if you see, Amazon also has a primary digital property. It is not so razor sharp focused as Samosa Singh, which essentially probably has just one product, a samosa. Amazon India sells a variety of product categories, but the flavor of the primary digital property and that of the secondary digital property are still the same. Let me now move on to a very different kind of a brand, a personal brand. I'm sure if you have read a lot of tech reviews, you might have come across this very popular YouTube influencer called Marcus Brownlee, and this is his primary digital property. And once again, I am emphasizing that I am still speaking about his main website, even though if you see, the entirety of his web links are totally different. They are focused on his presence on social media website. In fact, as I said, a bulk of his revenue actually comes from the ad earnings from YouTube. So he's a YouTuber by profession. He still has a primary digital property which he owns, and it is serving a very different purpose. It is actually serving to send people to the secondary digital properties. Very different from what the first two properties which we saw were doing. So this as we scroll down, in fact, you will see that he's very clear that he makes tech review, and then the social channels and are a very important part of this website. They appear at least in 3 places and are very hard to miss. Of course, the main, like I said, the main revenue for him is from his social media channel, which is a very popular tech review channel, and he's a very well regarded YouTuber. So once again, you will see that the secondary digital property is in fact here the prominent one, because this is a source of revenue. That doesn't mean that he didn't have a primary digital property, which is the main website where all of these are hosted. And if you are really looking to showcase your creative abilities, or just show you put forth your point of view to the world, possibly a secondary digital property would be a better way to do it, like he's done. He's a YouTube reviewer. He's a product reviewer on YouTube. That's his main passion. That's what he does for a living. But he does have pages on other social media platforms, other secondary digital properties. And I'm still emphasizing that this is still his primary digital property. Let's look at one final brand, Paytm, and then I'll come back and summarize what is probably already crystallizing within your mind as what a primary digital property is, what a secondary digital property is, and what are the differences between the two. So let's look at the website of Paytm.com. So I've gone to Paytm.com, and as you can see, this website pretty much allows you to do anything that the main app would do. We all know that the main place where Paytm's revenue comes from is the app. It is very rare that people open up Paytm.com to execute transactions. And if you look at the way it is laid out, in fact, it will be very difficult for us to say that this is very different from what we see on the Paytm app. Looks very similar, and as we will learn later on, this kind of this method of arranging a web page to imitate or mimic the flavor of an app is called a progressive web app. But I still say that this is the primary digital property of Paytm. And in fact, Paytm also has pages on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And it'll be hard once again for us to spot a direct link to them. Once again, they are tucked away at the bottom somewhere, which are hard to miss. And if you visit their secondary digital properties, you will see that they will have very prominent links to the app itself or to this website. And this directionality, or the way in which primary and secondary digital properties work, is what has been common across all the four. Whether you are a brand with transactions at the core, like I said, some of you will have this point of view. You will want to do commerce through your primary digital property, or if you just want to showcase your creative side of things, possibly having a secondary digital property as the main point or the main source on the internet is a good idea. But you should not stay away from creating a primary digital property, which essentially is your own presence on the internet. Now, we have seen the primary and secondary digital properties of four brands. We have seen a small local brand which had a primary digital property through which they were soliciting orders, and they had a page on social media platforms which we have called the secondary digital property, for which they have been focusing on community. We've also seen on the other side a very huge brand like Amazon, which has primary digital properties being the core of its business, but also having secondary digital properties. We have seen a personal brand who makes his revenue through actually the secondary digital properties, but still has a primary digital property, which is used as a front to divert traffic to the secondary digital properties. We have seen an app, Paytm, the app, whose main business actually happens and transactions happen on the app, but they still have a Paytm.com. What we have seen so far is that PDPs, or primary digital properties, are the singular presence of the brand on the internet, where a bunch of their transactions might happen. It also is a place where the philosophy of the brand is hosted. Associated closely with the primary digital properties are secondary digital properties, which are business pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and so on, whose main aim is to see, at least what appears to be, is to divert traffic to the primary digital property. In fact, whenever the primary digital property is the main source of revenue, the entire ambition of a secondary digital property will be to push traffic there. And like we saw in each of these secondary digital properties, there is a clear link back to the primary digital property. The link from the primary to the secondary digital property is not so strong, unless, like Marcus Brownlee, you're making money over there. But this is a very clear pattern that emerged in our exploration of the primary and secondary digital properties. Though one question remains, and it's a very important one. Why does one need to have both? Why does one just not open up either a primary digital property like Samosa, saying Amazon or Paytm, or just open up a secondary digital property like the MKBHD? And what it is sort of appearing is, if you have a commercial intent, it makes brands seem to favor a primary digital property. And if the commercial intent is not very apparent, like this Marcus Brownlee is not really selling anything, then secondary digital property seems to be just more important. So why not just have one of them? Why should you have both? And the answer to that lies solely in the kind of ownership or control you have on these two digital properties, the primary digital property and the secondary digital property. What is the main difference between the two is that the primary digital properties have a very high degree of control. What do I mean by degree of ownership or control? This ownership, or the high degree of ownership, doesn't just restrict itself to the features of the website. By this, I mean that actually the brand or the business is the legal owner of the website or the web app. As long as you're paying your domain hosting charges, There is no one else who can give or who can restrict what kind of information you put or what kind of content that gets hosted on your website. On the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum are all these pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. While they give the brand an opportunity to generate community, the features of those pages themselves are not really in the control of a brand. If tomorrow Facebook decides to change features on the business page or completely shut down a few features, and unfortunately this happens a lot, there's nothing that the brand or business can do. They just have to play along. And the secondary digital property suffers from this very important limitation, which is that it still relies on those social media platforms to provide these features. And despite possibly having years of content on the platform, they really do not have too much control on the features that are available to them. So that's why having both is crucial. It is not that the revenue is the central difference between the two. It is actually the kind of control that a brand or business gets, which is the driving factor. Now, if you look at mobile app, and when I say mobile app, think about the brand Paytm, whose main transactions happen on the app itself. And I have neither placed them on high control, nor have I placed them at a low control and chosen to place them somewhere in the middle. Now, why is this so? It is so because it is true that a mobile app gives Paytm a lot of control on the kind of features that it needs to put. It also gives it a control on the user journey. It can map out what exactly will happen when a user opens the app, what screens they will see, and so forth. But they are still limited by the listings that they have on either the Play Store or the App Store for users to discover the app in the first place. In the case of a website, all the user needs to do is to just have a browser. There is no further installation that is required for a user to discover Paytm.com. On the other hand, Paytm, the app, needs to be downloaded from either of these two app stores, and only then will a user understand what features that the app have. Now, I have picked this example to make a very specific point. As you would recollect, Paytm in fact had issues with Google Play designating them as a gambling related app and actually removing and offloading them from the Play Store for a while. If there was no Paytm.com, and if in this primary digital property didn't exist, they would have had a tough time while in the interim they were fixing the app to conduct their business. And this is not a very unusual occurrence. Whenever the degree of control is lesser, you exceed a little bit of control when you build an app. You give out more control when you go to the secondary digital property. It is very important to ensure that you have a baseline or a base ready and of whom you are the sole legal owner. In fact, this even if your revenue is actually happening on the mobile app, as in the case of a Paytm, or on a secondary digital property, as in the case of that YouTube influencer, you still need to have a PDP because it is the only legal entity that you own outside of all other digital assets that you have. And if you have a brand, business, or idea, if you don't open your own idea.com, somebody else will, and that's why it's important to open up your primary digital property at the outset. And as you have opened your own primary digital properties now, I hope this discussion has made it clear why was this focus placed on opening up a primary digital property. What role does it play? It could either be a place where commerce happens, where you list your products and make sales, or just a place where you showcase your creativity. Irrespective of whatever your objective be, whether commercial or non-commercial, the primary digital property is the only place where you are the legal owner of your content. All other places merely serve as sources of traffic to your primary digital property, where you are free to deliver the kind of user experience that you have always envisaged when you came up with this brand or business idea. And this discussion hopefully has made this difference very clear. The difference between the PDP and SDP is not on revenue, but on the degree of ownership or control that a brand has on each of these properties. Hi. So far we have seen the role played by the primary digital property, the role played by the secondary digital property, and the importance of having both of them as the central pillars around which digital marketing efforts will revolve. But what exactly are these digital marketing efforts? What does a digital marketer do on a day-to-day basis? And where do these two properties feature in this whole galaxy of digital marketing? And this slide that you see now is a summary of the entirety of this course in one slide, highlighting the most important aspects and skills that you will pick up as you go along, and also places these two digital properties which we have discussed in some detail so far into the whole picture. Now let me start by taking you through this entire structure. I'll also take you through the only three different kinds of campaigns that you will run or any digital marketer usually runs, and then we'll pick one example of each, and then we will see how all of these pieces will fit together exactly in the same way, depending irrespective of which type of campaign you are running. So let's begin with an understanding of what this whole figure means. Like we discussed, the primary digital property is usually the center of the entire universe of digital marketing efforts. The idea in undertaking such efforts is to bring users from wherever they are, whatever they are doing, and to come land on your primary digital property, where they either give you money, which means the users that land on the digital property will convert and give you revenue, or they'll give you time. If you don't have a specific commercial intent for the primary digital property, remember that you are still asking for the user's time. The time they spend browsing through your content or just being interested in whatever you have to say as the primary voice or the primary output of your primary digital property. If you have a commercial intent, they come to the primary digital property to ascertain or to verify whether your brand's promise or the business's promise can be fulfilled by transacting with you on the primary digital property. Whatever be the objective, ultimately, all of digital marketing is doing specifically this: bringing users from wherever they are and forcing them or engineering their journey from that place to your primary digital property, where they either give you money or they give you their time. Now, so a great way of thinking about digital marketing is to think of spinning a sort of a net, starting with the origin being your primary digital property, and casting a wide enough net and pulling people from wherever they are to your primary digital property. And in this net, there are three very crucial points or aspects that you will pick up. Each of them has a pride of place in this course. Each of them are huge modules where a lot of specific tools will be taught. But let me capture or let me summarize what is going to come your way as you go along. The first, of course, is the web. People are on the web searching for information, searching for things to buy, searching for their interests and activities to do. And your job in this arm will be to pull all of them from wherever they are to your primary digital property. There will be two main ways in which you will tackle this problem. You could either choose to ensure that your digital property ranks very high on these search queries that people are doing on the web, or you will place ads. Could be display ads or search ads, whatever it might be, to push people from the point where they are searching or browsing for this information on the web to the primary digital property. The second huge place where people spend a lot of time and attention is the social media. And here the secondary digital properties will play a crucial role, acting as anchor points for your brand's voice, but once again pushing people from wherever they are browsing stuff on social media to the primary digital property. Once again, there will be two ways in which this will be executed, either through the organic route, which means you don't pay for these impressions, or the paid route, where in which case you're going to actually place ads or to pay for people to transition here. The third major module that you see here, which I've placed at the bottom, is that of email and mobile. Email and mobile is fundamentally different from the web or the social in the sense that it is much more personal. You will also see that the arrows I have put for the web and the social to be much darker than the ones I have put here, and this is the only bi-directional arrow. That also reflects the peculiarity or the speciality of email and mobile as a very important digital marketing channel. These two, the thickness of the arrows indicate that these two, which is the web and the social, will remain a most important source of customers and viewers to your primary digital property. And it will be your major job to engineer these journeys from wherever they are, either searching or browsing for information on the web, or just looking at updates from their friends and just having fun on social media, to come visit your page and give you either money or give you time. Email and mobile plays a support role to this whole journeys. You will see that many a time, email and mobile, these being very personal devices and personal mediums of communication, will help you to cement these relationships that you are forging on your primary digital property. For example, every time a transaction is clocked, you might actually send out an email trigger confirming the payment, or for them to actually make the payment, an OTP based verification system could be executed on the mobile phone. So while these things are not the primary ways in which traffic will land to you, they act as a two-way communication between the place where the revenue or time is being clocked and the user's personal device or a personal way in which you could reach out to them. In terms of the kind of tools that you will pick up, you will note as you look at your course structure that a bulk of the time, a lot of time is going to be spent in teaching you how to bring people from the web to your primary digital property, how to bring people from social media to your digital property, and how do you use email and mobile marketing tools to ensure that once they land on the digital property, their hands are held in the right way and their journey is complete. Now, this is a very broad, overarching view of the entire landscape of digital marketing, and it makes very good sense for you to keep this whole structure in mind, because there is going to be a lot of detail that will come your way, and having this one broad picture of what the actual objective of the digital marketing is, given that you're already fixed about the value that your primary digital property has to offer, is already done. If your primary digital property or the product or the business that you sell doesn't fulfill the promise that the whole marketing effort is trying to portray, there is no way even the best digital marketing campaigns are not really going to lead to sustained customer relationships. And this is something which, though is not explicitly taught, is a very important thing. We assume that your brand or business is good, that you have given proper thought in building up this product, and the emphasis of the digital marketing efforts is to ensure that people know about you. And when they do know about you, they transact with you. And when they do the first transaction, that they transact more and more. That brings us to the three kinds of digital marketing campaigns that you will ever run in your life as a digital marketer. The first kind of campaign is the acquisition campaign, where neither do your customers know you, and possibly more importantly, of course, is that you don't know your target customers. At this point, as at the time when people are running acquisition campaigns, it's usually very early in their course of business, which means they have a product idea, a seed idea that holds promise, but it's by definition an inside out view. You are looking at what I can do, what I am really good at, and are specifically unclear on which kind of people will this appeal to, what kind of people are likely going to purchase this product or service. And at this stage is when you will focus on running acquisition campaigns where you're trying to clock the first purchase, trying to land the first subscriber, or trying to land the first most attentive viewer. So all of these kind of campaigns will focus on firstly teaching you the kind of users that like your content and teaching your users the kind of content or the kind of product that you have to offer. And typically, like I said, this happens very early into the business where the business is trying to show or trying to reinforce this product market fit, which till then exists on paper. The second kind of campaigns are the activation or retention sort of campaigns. And these are sort of very, very important after your business reaches a certain scale. As when you begin, there is acquisition which is trying to get you the first few customers. But as you grow, as the scale increases over time, and there is a sizable amount of customers with us, then it becomes important to ensure that these customers don't leak out, that they don't shift to competition, or that they feel that the promise that was coming to us through the primary digital property is no longer true. At this point, the focus of your marketing efforts is going to shift to retention or activation, which is pushing them to transact more and more. And the question that will come up here is that why is this even happening? Why should the attention shift from an acquisition campaign to the retention campaign after a sizable amount of the target market is acquired? Look at it this way: if this is your target market, say for example, if you are a payment gateway, this is the entire population of India. Out of this is the target market, which means this is the population of users who are comfortable to use digital payments as their primary mode of payment. Now, when you launch, say for example, your Airtel Pay competing against Google Pay and the others, nobody knows that you have offered a product. So your very first acquisition campaigns are going to be targeted very broad-based because you don't know which kind of people will like the product you're offering, and they will likely grab only small chunks of this target market. As you get more and more data, as you acquire more and more, you will notice that I am now covering much more of the target market and there is only so much left for me to acquire. So as a natural course, as you will acquire more and more customers, there will be so many less left for you to acquire and so many more for you to retain. And that is why the campaign is going to shift to a retention sort of a campaign. Finally, when you have sort of acquired a large proportion of your market and you are constantly looking at ways to retain them, there will also be a phase where you will focus on brand building, where there is where you're trying to forge the values or the beliefs of your product to your customer base, most likely because you want to use that brand as a strength to open up another market, and to use the brand as a pivot point or a strength to jump and to replicate what you've done in one target market into another. So as the business grows, it is natural that the kind of digital marketing efforts you do are going to shift from acquisition to activation and retention, and finally to brand building. What remains constant though is this whole galaxy. Irrespective of the type of campaign, ultimately the objective is to pull people from wherever they are, whatever they are doing, and to push them to your primary digital property so that each of these individual different campaign objectives could be met with a long-term goal or a long-term vision towards fulfilling the promise, which is the reason why you opened up this primary digital property in the first place. Now that we've seen the process for digital analytics and web analytics, we've taken a look at some of the important metrics and we have seen how to pick the appropriate metrics. It's now time to move towards the action side of things. How do you actually execute digital analytics? And here is where the tools of digital analytics come into play. Before we go on to focusing on individual tools, in this segment, let's look at first what are the tools that are available to a marketer to execute digital analytics. We will also discuss a few challenges with these tools. And finally, we will see how web analytics is an important part of broader phenomenon of operational excellence within the business. At the end of this, web analytics is effectively a very good method to maintain operational excellence within the business, and that's where this whole discussion around digital analytics will end. Let's now look at some of the tools that are available. And here the idea is to give a flavor, an overview of the different types of tools that are available and to identify some of the important strengths and weaknesses of these tools. The first, probably the most popular web analytics tool is of course Google Analytics, a free analytics tool that is provided by Google. Very popular since it is free to use. A lot of businesses tend to adopt Google Analytics right from a very early stage. It has an extensive range of metrics. All the metrics, almost every one of them we discussed previously, are all tracked through Google Analytics. It has very user-friendly interface which helps businesses to analyze different aspects of website traffic and user behavior. Another quite popular paid tool from Adobe is the Adobe Analytics tool. Some of the key highlights of this tool is its ability to ingest and provide analytics on real-time data. There are some very nice user flows around diagnosing user behavior and mapping consumer journeys. A third tool, which is also a paid web analytics tool, is Mixpanel, another very popular web analytics tool. This tool is really optimized to understand user actions and events. They have a very nice experiment interface where you can directly trigger experiments and measure the outcomes and optimize your user experience, your product experience using these events. And here is where Mixpanel scores. Beyond these top three, which are of which Google Analytics has a lion's share among marketers, there are other tools such as Clicky, Pivot Pro, and Matomo, which also help in this process of conducting web analytics on a specific website. These are the tools, but are there any challenges associated with these tools? And typically businesses will tend to use at least two or more tools to conduct web analytics. And one very big problem which you have to grapple with as you use multiple tools is that they pull data from different sources. And even though the same information is being presented, the same metric is being measured, there might be fine differences between the same number. For example, the conversion rate or the click-through rate or the channel that actually contributed to a purchase might be measured differently by Google Analytics and differently by Adobe Analytics, and this might show up as differences in the KPIs or the metrics that you measure. One specific source, like is mentioned on the slide, is where is the data being collected from. If you give access to your website server logs, that might be a more accurate measure of, say, for example, the number of page views on a certain page. While another tool might be using third-party cookies to track your page visitors, which might be less reliable. So same outcome, which is page views, when measured through two different methods, might give two different values, and this is a challenge with different data sources. Closely associated, of course, is different tracking methods. Some tools used client-side tracking, which is tracking on the customer who's opening the website front, or server-side tracking, where you're tracking the requests that come to the customer to a server hosted by the business. There can be a difference in the metrics because of the different tracking methods that are used. Typically, client-side metrics are less in control of the marketer, because if you delete a cookie or if you simply open up a new browser, access the same website through different browsers, that is much difficult to control. And this different tracking might have an impact on whether you count the user as a unique or a returning user based on the different tracking that was used. Server-side tracking is typically more reliable because the business has much more control on the traffic that is coming to its own server. But be aware that these different tools might use different tracking methods, and that again results in the completeness of the data captured and also the accuracy of the metrics that you are measuring. One more challenge with these tools is the granularity in the time frame. Some tools might be capturing data literally at a very granular basis, which is like every second or every minute. Another tool might actually have a broader time frame, say at the rate of a day or maybe even a week or a month, which means the granularity of data also impacts the results that are presented. Averages will move from tool to tool. You might find fine differences based on the time frame of data collection that was used to build that metric. And finally, settings and configurations. It is real that people use ad blockers, people change or delete cookies, people disallow certain browsing behaviors to be tracked. And these such inclusions or exclusions, they have these configurations and settings. They directly impact the ability of a tool to collect data, and this is also a specific challenge. So while there are tools, there is still a lot of data that can be collected and analyzed through analytics. It is important to understand that these tools come with certain set of challenges, and mostly these are challenges that we live with, and we make over a period of time as you run campaigns and you get to grips with the deficiencies of these tools. You learn to sidestep and use the tools where it is most accurate. One final thing to keep in mind while we are tracking and analyzing data in the context of web analytics is that this is ultimately an extension of the operational efficiency of your organization. If you don't have proper processes in place which are ensuring that the operational excellence that is otherwise followed in other business processes is also translated and used in this whole process of web analytics, then this will show up as incorrect findings, insights that don't make sense, analysis which doesn't lead to decisions, and all of this is rooted on whether the principles of operational excellence have been applied in tracking and analysis of the data that comes out of the tracking in web analytics. Some symptoms of bad operational excellence practice are incorrectly implemented tracking codes, which means you wanted to track a page, but then you didn't follow the procedure properly, and then you have a set of pages which you think were getting tracked, but in reality are not. Outdated tracking codes, where you're using codes which are expired, and you're still relying on those expired codes and making wrong decisions based on those. Goals not being defined properly. Business goals, we spent quite a bit of time understanding how to formulate proper SMART goals. Incorrect attribution models. When specifically looking for things such as conversion, it is important to understand which channel specifically gave you that conversion, and here having a clearly defined attribution model. Attribution here meaning, if I have a conversion, who is responsible for this conversion? Is it search? Is it social? Is it affiliate? Who exactly should I credit for this conversion? And getting this incorrect means that you are using the wrong channels. You are unnecessarily inflating the performance of a channel, thinking that they are good. And all of this are symptoms of bad operational practices. If you have an organizational operational excellence process within the organization, ensure that you translate that to this whole process of web analytics as well. And without this, you have an analytics effort which is standing on very weak footing. Now that we have taken a view of the different tools that are available in the context of digital analytics, Let's pause and take a look at what we have covered in this segment. First, we have seen that there are several tools that you could use to conduct web analytics, and each of that comes with its own set of strengths and weaknesses. We have taken summary of each of these tools in this segment. What is important is that the choice of a tool is driven mostly by the amount of data that you could collect and the bouquet of analysis that you could run. But these tools also come with a set of limitations on a broad sense. They could present, for instance, different data because of different tracking sources, different data sources, different granularity of time, different configurations that are used, and they impact the accuracy, completeness, and presentation of the data in a tool. So when you pick a tool, it's not only important to check all the features it has to offer, but you will also have to read the fine print on the limitations. You have to understand how the tool collects the data, at what level does it aggregate it, and whether it is a problem for the use case that you're trying to handle. If you're running a campaign where tracking it every minute is important and you have a tool which is tracking data at a weekly level, then clearly there's a mismatch. Finally, operational excellence is critical to ensure that your processes within web analytics are correctly formulated. We saw some of the symptoms of bad web analytics practices. Importing good operational excellence practices is very important in the context of a web analytics process. Hopefully, the journey so far has excited you tremendously on the kind of opportunities that lay in front of you as you detail out your digital marketing campaigns. You possibly are at a place where you just have a germ or a seed of